Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation today. My name is Olha Atamanova. It's been 9 years of the war, and today is day 384 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by the occupiers. And now we will be talking about the situation in Belarus. Joining us online is Franak Vyachorka, advisor to the Belarusian opposition leader Svitlana Tykhanovskaya. Good afternoon, Mr. Franak. Good afternoon. I propose to start our conversation with the latest international visits by Lukashenka. I mean the key visits, the one to China. What can it tell us about? We've seen that Lukashenka supported so-called peace plan by Xi Jinping. What's your opinion? What can it witness about, and what was the conversation about there? I think that for Lukashenka it was important to maintain his external legitimacy, and no one except for Putin and Russian governors and President of Zimbabwe was meeting him, so it was important for him to show that he's still legitimate, he's being recognized, and at least somebody messed with him. That's why the Lukashenko's propaganda devoted so much efforts to it. But as to other things, China considered Belarus as the intermediate area for the transit to Europe. So now when there are sanctions imposed against China, the use of Belarus area become of less benefit to China, and investing into Belarus. Now that we see the crisis in all the sectors of Belarusian economy, what can it witness about is the system for supply of equipment or weapons theoretically through Belarus to Russia. But again, that's not less probable, because logistically it's horror, and I doubt that China would risk to build some international schemes through Belarusian regime. So it will not change anything except for the picture and shaking hands, and there will be no serious changes after this visit. As to Lukashenko, everything is clear why he needed that meeting, but why did Xi Jinping needed it? What can he get from Lukashenko? What may be of interest to him, because I doubt that that meeting would have been possible. Shouldn't it have not been interesting for Xi Jinping or Chinese party? Well, it's a good question, but we see that China tries to play a mediator, a peacemaker between the global south, which becomes very important now in the context of food security and democratic world, Russia, Ukraine. So they try to pose as a third neutral party, and meeting with Lukashenko may be balanced by some conversation with President Zelensky. It could be a demonstration that we communicate with all the parties, and I cannot exclude that it could be a request by Putin to provide Lukashenko with some degree of legitimacy, or maybe that was a visit which was planned ahead. If you check the schedule of Xi Jinping, he keeps meeting all the world leaders, including of those from smaller and less important countries. That's why that meeting with Lukashenko is a part of the game of the neutral mediator. Mr. Franak, let's talk about the situation in Belarus itself. What has changed within this period? From what we see, the repressive machine is evolving, and they try tightening those knots stronger and stronger, tighter. If we're wrong, please tell us what is the sentiment inside Belarus. What do people think was the situation in general? Well, in Belarus, Russians act as if they, in the same way they act in the occupied territories. They try to take all the society under control. Any other thoughts are being eradicated. Many mass media are being closed, are being shut down. There is a total Russification. Belarusian language is being eradicated, Belarusian culture is being eradicated, everything that makes Belarusians another people, another country. We see these policies of absorbing that Russia performs with the hands of Lukashenka. So if anybody thinks that Lukashenka tries to seem independent and he tries to counter Putin, he does everything that Putin requires from him. We observe a wave of arrests among government officials, law enforcement, the top level officials. They say that the cameras, there are secret surveillance cameras all around, so it's not only about the journalists and civil activists. The system starts looking for traitors inside of it. Oles Belarusian received 10 years sentence. This Tykhanovskaya received a sentence of 15 years. Her husband was added more years until 18 years. The guerrillas got up to 24 years sentences, and on the daily basis they detain 15-20 people, and there are many women and children among them. Many people are being detained for their comments in TikTok and Instagram. There is a sentiment of terror, Stalin's time terror, and under conditions like that it's difficult to perform any protest activities, but many people joined guerrilla movements. And you remember a couple of weeks ago there was an attack on a Russian spy airplane A-50. It was accomplished by the same guerrillas. Unfortunately, we don't know about all the guerrillas attacks, we only know about the successful ones, but believe me, a lot more things are happening than are described in the mass media. Well, I'm sure you're in touch with civil rights activists who are still free there. Do you understand the scale of the repressions for the people and the number of people who are behind the bars? Well, it's about 1,500 people were recognized as political prisoners. More than 4,000 people are in prisons due to political motives. The real figure may be way bigger. Many people are not imprisoned, but they were sent to so-called chemistry, the forced works. They work in different hazardous industries, in plants and factories. They can be considered political prisoners too. Unfortunately, those people whose sentences already expired, they are being released in very bad health condition, and they cannot get any medical aid in Belarus, I mean, of the level they need, and the government forces them to immigration. So they are being deprived of the possibility of living normally, existing normally in the society. You mentioned Instagram, TikTok, and other social media which are available to us. Do we understand what's going on there? Is internet available there? Any Telegram channels, or everything is blocked and being monitored in Belarus? Well, the social networks are available, but they are being thoroughly monitored by KGB, and when a person leaves a comment or a like, it is being documented, and they will be most likely followed. And the KGB follows very thoroughly Telegram, and if you even install Telegram on your telephone, it's been considered the extremist social networks, and they can come for you even if you install it. And there are provocateurs working in Telegram. They even use such instruments as chat roulette, where people randomly connect through video chat with one another, and KGB provocateurs, they provoke people for some political conversations, and then special services come to their homes and they imprison people for those answers, even on those internal non-public platforms. So now we see that the regime learned some lessons from year 2020 when they did not control the media space, and now they focus on the total clearance to remove any free thinking in internet, in social networks, and those thoughts are being replaced by Russian propaganda. Well, we know that maybe the majority of Belarusian opposition is currently out of Belarus, so do you feel any persecutions around the world, including you? Yes, we do feel after the airplane with Roman Protasevich was captured, I mean the Ryanair airplane, we had to take all the security measures. We tried to verify all the people whom we work with, either on permanent or temporary basis, so you never know. We get information from Lithuania, from Poland, when there is a threat from special services. We cannot exclude it when the regime sends their political structures to emigration, but we live in constant fear that some agents may come to us, and we have to look for normal, sane, reasonable balance between security and trust. So we have to preserve this normal balance. We have questions on the floor. Nadia Yurchenko, Ukrinform, getting back to the international visits of Lukashenko. He is currently in Iran, you didn't mention it, and it's quite demonstrative. And Ukrainian experts expressed an opinion that he is the messenger of Putin during such visits. So to what extent does he work on Belarusian or Russian agenda during such visits? Well, Lukashenko already left Iran. His meeting was quite short there. I'm curious what the results of those negotiations will be, because the trade reduced maybe 10 times between Belarus and Iran. Maybe they were negotiating some cooperation in the military sector. There were rumors that there might be an assembly of Shaheds established in Belarus, but I can say that Lukashenko may be trying to export the products which are sanctioned to Iran. We know that Iran was imposed secondary sanctions, and there is deficit of many products there, and Lukashenko doesn't have any option for selling those products. There is also issue with logistics, how to supply them from Belarus to Iran, but they will be looking for some way around, maybe by land or air, to arrange such supplies. Also, this visit was important for Lukashenko because that's a moment of recognition, so that nobody says that he is Putin's marionette in international arena, but I doubt he has any independence. The one thing, the only thing where he is independent maybe is internal policy, but external policy goes in line with Russia. We see how they vote in United Nations, how they support each other, so make no illusions. I think that at least 50% or maybe 80% he fulfills Russian agenda, and 20% is exercising of his proper control over the society. And maybe the last question will be around the situation inside the country. Do you have a feeling that it's a preparation of the population by Lukashenko for a war ahead, for example, or that Belarus will join this war on the side of Russia? Is there any sentiment like that, specifically in the view of those latest news of the resolution to mobilize all those in reserve? Can it tell you something like that about that fact? I don't believe that Belarusians would join this war. There were attempts to get them involved back in 2022, but those attempts were sabotaged, and there is a consensus in Belarusian society that they should not support Russia in this war. The mobilization measures, they are of a different effect. They are demonstrating loyalty to Russia. The fact that the Belarusians support Russia, but in fact there is no serious mobilization observed there. When there will be any change, we will find out about it anyway promptly. Thank you very much for this broadcast. I'm reminding you that joining us was Franak Vyachorka, the advisor to the Belarusian opposition leader Svitlana Tykhanovskaya. Our team is preparing for the schedule for tomorrow. Bear with us, and glory to Ukraine.